Montessori Grandma. Episode 54. Breathing Beyond Humans.
The story of breathing. A look at respiration of living things. Retold and presented by Geeta Vijayachandran. The children get together. It was summer holidays and Ammu and Chinnu were ready to receive their cousins. Adu and Viku were meeting their cousins after 2 years. They were excited and were planning how to spend the 2 weeks together. The day finally arrived. After big hugs and cheers, the children got to plan what to do during the days ahead. Ammu had just joined her new college and the campus was really like a paradise. They went to see the campus. There were plants all around with a pond in the center. The children were wandering around when they happened to see a baby pigeon on the ground. It had fallen off from its nest. Ammu picked it up with care. The bird was breathing very slowly. Adu took out a towel and tried to wrap the bird to keep it warm. Chinnu went and fetched some water. Viku tried to pour the water into his hand to help the bird drink. But the bird was too weak. The children took their water bottle and slowly used the straw and poured water into the bird's beak. They tried their best to get the bird back on its feet, but the bird needed more care. They took it to the vet. The vet asked the children to leave the bird with him. The children got home and decided to check on the bird the next day. They were eager to see whether it survived the night. The children reached the vet's early. They were met with not favorable news. The vet explained what happened. The bird was not able to breathe in spite of all the help given. The children were disappointed. Ammu had a question. I heard birds are masters of efficient breathing, she asked. Yes, they are efficient breathers, said the vet. But the dear bird did not last the night. Flying takes a lot of energy. For this, they have one of the most efficient respiratory systems. Their lungs are connected to special air sacs. These keep fresh air moving through their body all the time, even when the bird is breathing out. The continuous flow of oxygen means their flight muscles never run out of oxygen. It allows birds to stay in the air for long journeys. How do birds breathe? Asked Viku. Air enters through the nostrils and travels down the trachea to the lungs. The children listened attentively. The system involves 2 full breath cycles to move air through the lungs and air sacs, a process that allows birds to extract significantly more oxygen than mammals. The fresh air splits with some entering the lungs and the rest filling the rear air sacs. The air from the posterior air sacs then moves into the lungs for gas exchange, displacing stale air that moves into the anterior, that is the front air sacs. New air enters the posterior sacs and the lungs, while the stale air from the anterior sacs is expelled through the trachea. Fresh air from the posterior sacs enters the lungs for gas exchange, and the now stale air from the anterior sacs exits the body. One-way airflow. Unlike mammals, birds have an unidirectional flow of air through their parabronchi, that is, a looped airways in the lungs, for continuous gas exchange. Air sacs. Birds have a system of air sacs that acts like bellows, drawing air into the lungs and expelling spent air. Rigid lungs. The lungs themselves do not expand or contract. Instead, the air sacs expand and contract to facilitate air movement through the lungs. Efficiency. This complex system allows birds to extract oxygen more efficiently than mammals, enabling them to fly at high altitudes with thin air. Cross-current gas exchange. A cross-current blood flow mechanism in the lungs further optimizes the extraction of oxygen from the air. The vet paused. Adu wanted to know more. Do all organisms breathe? Yes. Respiration gives every living being the energy to move, grow, and survive. We have lungs to breathe. But have you wondered how worms and insects take in air? Let us look at the different fascinating methods of respiration, said the vet. Can you tell us how amoeba breathe? Asked Chinnu. Let us meet the amoeba, a tiny single-celled creature. It does not have lungs, gills, or a nose. Instead, it breathes through its cell membrane. Oxygen from the water around it diffuses straight into the cell, and carbon dioxide moves out the same way. This is because amoeba are very small. Their large surface area compared to their volume makes gas exchange quick and easy. Wanted to know how earthworms breathe? Earthworms are skin breathers. Earthworms have no lungs. Its moist skin acts as a respiratory surface. Water in the soil enters the tiny blood capillaries under the skin, and the respiratory pigment hemoglobin carries it around the body. Carbon dioxide in the worm's body diffuses out in the same way. This is why earthworms love moist soil. And what about insects? Asked Ammo. Insects breathe through tracheae. Insects like grasshoppers and cockroaches do not use blood to carry oxygen. Instead, they have a special system of tiny tubes called tracheae. Air enters through small openings on their body surface called spiracles. What happens next? Asked Adu. From there, it travels directly through the tracheae to every cell. This direct delivery system is very efficient and ensures a constant supply of oxygen. It helps these insects stay active and respond quickly to their surroundings. Can't believe how they can breathe like us, remarked Chinnu. Ammo, you know so much about fish. Can you tell us how they breathe? Asked Chinnu. Fish breathe underwater with gills. Water is not only home for fish, but it is also their source of oxygen. Gills are thin structures richly supplied with blood vessels. When a fish opens its mouth, water flows in and passes over the gills. Dissolved oxygen is extracted and absorbed into the bloodstream. The deoxygenated water, along with carbon dioxide, is then expelled through gill slits on the sides of the fish's head. The oxygenated blood then travels from the gills throughout the rest of the fish's body to provide energy and function. Ammu continued, to make breathing super efficient, the water and blood move in opposite directions. Fish uses a system called counter current flow. This clever trick helps them absorb as much oxygen as possible from the water. Why can't fish breathe air? Asked Viku. Unlike humans, fish cannot breathe air because their gills are designed to extract oxygen from water, not from air. When a fish is on land, the gill filaments collapse and stick together, preventing the water from flowing over them. This stops the oxygen absorption process, and without a constant flow of water over the gills, the fish cannot get the oxygen it needs to survive, said Amo. Frogs are amazing when it comes to breathing, the vet continued. Frogs have double life, double respiration. During the tadpole stage, frogs breathe with gills just like fish. Adult frogs can breathe both on land and in water. It's a true master of adaptation. In water, they use their moist skin to take in oxygen. This is just like earthworms. On land, they switch to using their lungs. This means a frog changes its breathing style as it grows up and moves between water and land. What about microorganisms? Asked Ammo. They survive without oxygen. Some tiny organisms like yeast and certain bacteria do not need oxygen at all. They use a process called anaerobic respiration, said the vet. Yeast breaks down glucose to produce alcohol, carbon dioxide, and a little energy. This is why bread dough rises and the carbon dioxide forms bubbles. The vet paused. Lactobacillus bacteria turns glucose into lactic acid, which helps milk turn into curd. Thus, their work is very useful to us too, from baking soft, fluffy bread to making curd and even wine, said the vet. I read about a strange bacteria breathing electricity instead of oxygen, said Ammo. Oh, really? The children echoed in unison. And we should not forget plants, said Chinnu. Ammo explained. Plants may look calm and quiet, but they are busy breathing all the time. They take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide through different parts. Leaves use tiny openings called stomata. Stems use small pores called lenticles. Roots take in air from the tiny spaces between soil particles. What happens during the day? Asked Viku. During the day, plants do both photosynthesis and respiration. Some of the oxygen made during photosynthesis is used immediately for respiration, and some of the carbon dioxide from respiration is reused for photosynthesis. At night, when there is no sunlight, only respiration continues, said Adu. The children learned so much. They had tried to save a hurt bird, and now they have learned about how different organisms breathe. I thought breathing was very straightforward. But look at how these animals breathe, said Chinnu. Maybe there are other ways other organisms breathe, said Viku. We shouldn't forget how humans breathe, said Adu. Humans breathe through a process involving muscle contraction and a system of airways that moves air into the lungs for gas exchange, she said. Muscle contraction. The diaphragm contracts and moves downwards, and the muscles between your ribs contract to pull the rib cage up and out. This movement increases the volume of the chest cavity. Air intake. As the volume of the chest cavity increases, the pressure inside decreases, causing air to be sucked in through the nose or mouth. Air travels down the windpipe or trachea into the bronchial tubes, which branch into smaller bronchioles and finally reaches the tiny air sacs called alveoli. Ammo continued about exhalation or expiration, muscle relaxation. The diaphragm relaxes and moves back up, and the rib muscles relax, allowing the rib cage to move down and inward. Cavity contraction. This decreases the volume of the chest cavity. Air expulsion. The decreased volume increases the pressure inside the lungs, forcing air out through the same passageways it entered. Gas exchange in the lungs. Oxygen into blood. Once air reaches the alveoli, oxygen moves from the alveoli across the thin walls of the capillaries into the bloodstream. Carbon dioxide out of blood. At the same time, carbon dioxide moves from the blood into the alveoli to be expelled from the body. Ammo ended and took a deep breath. The children came back home, all were exhausted, but happy to have learned so much about breathing. In a way, it was thanks to the little bird who they tried to save. Hope tomorrow will be more exciting, said Vico. That brings us to the end of Breathing Beyond Humans. Thank you for watching. This is Geeta Vijayachandran signing off.
Montessori Grandma.